What's going on, everyone? We're sort of back on the Sonic classics with Knuckles and the Chaotix team taking the spotlight this time. As of the making of this video, many of the classic Sonic games, even their Game Gear titles, which I still have yet to experience, had some kind of re-released on hardware that is easier to access. But the one game that had eluded me and many others for years until emulation became more widely known is Knuckles Chaotix, one of the most obscure Sonic games that had been stuck in 32X jail for its entire lifespan. There are plenty of theories out there that would explain why the game never escaped its double-decker prison, but out of all of these, the one that seems to be the most plausible is that the game was difficult to emulate due to the platform it was designed for, as even the current emulators of today struggle to properly emulate this game. And let's be real, there were not a lot of people who were made aware of or just didn't care about the 32X like that. The console only had like 40 games on it, and it went through a very short lifespan before Sega finally pulled the plug on that sucker for good. But how was the game itself? From the jump, Knuckles Chaotix separates from the rest of the classic series by introducing a ring tether mechanic where the player character and its partner are held together by the equivalent of a rubber band, and they must use that tether in order to reliably navigate the stages they'll be traveling on. Trust me, this is a mechanic you cannot ignore. The game will make sure of that. So here's a quick rundown of the main story. After the events of the Death Egg saga, this new island seemed to appear out of nowhere, and Knuckles, being the explorer he is, went to go check it out for himself. But by the time he got there, he soon discovered that this island had already been invaded by Dr. Robotnik, and it was turned into his new base of operations. That is why the island appears to be very mechanical and has several structures of the Doctor all over the place, going for a main attractions theme because Robotnik really loves his amusement parks and resorts. The reason why Robotnik came here in the first place is so he could harness the powers of the 6 Chaos Rings and use them to summon the Master Emerald so he can proceed with his original plans before Sonic and his friends stopped him prior. And this is where Knuckles and the Chaotix team stepped in. I should mention that Robotnik isn't alone. He's got Metal Sonic helping him out too, acting as his best enforcer to deal with Knuckles and his crew. In the beginning, the game will open up with a useful tutorial that will show you most of the ins and outs with the new buddy system you're going to be using throughout the game, and I highly suggest you take your time to understand how everything works before playing, otherwise you're going to be in for a rough time. You can do some pretty interesting things like having your partner remain stationary while you stretch the tether as far as you can go before launching yourself at maximum speed in the opposite direction. You can also have your partner sling you upwards through certain platforms, and you can even throw your partner at enemies or use them as a means to sling yourself across the stage. That last part I just mentioned, by the way, is by far the most useful skill you're going to want to learn how to use as soon as possible, as this will be the most reliable method for getting around. You can do this by tossing your partner and hitting the hold button for only a second so that you'll be sent flying with them in that direction. Don't be like me and not catch on to this method until the very end where it didn't matter anymore. One last thing you can also do is summon your partner if you ever need them at your side right away, but keep in mind that you'll lose 10 rings each time you do this. You can even go into the negatives if you call them while you don't have any rings at all. This is something I've never seen in any of the Sonic games I've played. The tether mechanic as a whole is a unique experience and does have a fun factor, but it doesn't come without its problems. It took me a good while to get used to how awkward the movement felt, especially when you're traveling through the air and watching your duo sling all over the place. Gaining momentum from a standstill is easy to do, but it's very hard to maintain, so trying to obtain that speed aspect of this title is next to impossible. And despite Charmy being the best character in the game for reasons I'll explain later on, he's arguably one of the worst characters to have as a partner. Because Charmy doesn't have a regular jump like everyone else, he is prone to getting stuck behind certain structures, and this can lead into situations where you're going to struggle to free yourselves, as jumping around or attempting to run ahead is not going to be enough. This wouldn't be so bad if it happened once or twice, but it's happened every single time I got him as a partner. I appreciate the attempt at reinventing the wheel here, and this tether system does have potential. Once you get past that awkward phase, it's not too bad, but depending on who you are, this can be a gimmick that can easily turn you away, and it's not hard to see why it would. Like I said earlier, it took me almost the entire game to really understand and figure out how this mechanic is truly supposed to work, and this is mostly because I needed to completely forget everything I knew about Sonic games in the first place. The opening stage does a fantastic job in laying down the groundwork for how Knuckles Chaotix is going to play out. You're going to be traveling across not one, not two, but 5 different variations of the stages while also dealing with a day and night cycle that can affect certain things while you're playing. The opening stage also gives you plenty of breathing room to play with that tether system, so you'll somewhat be used to it by the time you start the real deal. Plus, you'll be greeted with one of the best tracks in the entire game. I'm going to return to this subject on the game's music later on, but man, that is solid work. Anytime you load up your file, you're able to pick between a whopping 5 characters this time, those characters being Knuckles, Mighty, Espio, Vector, and Charmy. Each of them, excluding Charmy, controls roughly the same, with the big differences being their method of traversal and some of their physics. You got Knuckles, who plays exactly the same way he always did in previous games, with his grinding and wall climbing fully intact. Espio will be able to run along walls in the ceilings, and Mighty is the fastest runner, plus he's also able to wall jump in any direction, making him the fastest wall scaler out of everyone. Vector, who is my favorite one to play as, can air dash in any direction, which is useful for instantly picking up speed or changing your momentum on a dime. This is why, despite his grounded movement requiring a 10-year startup, it doesn't matter thanks to his air dash. Plus, he has the best running animation out of everyone here. He too can also climb walls similar to Knuckles if he air dashes into one, but you need to hold down the jump button the entire time. All 4 of them have access to the spin dash, even though spin dashing in this game is useless here, since you hardly gain any speed with it, let alone keep any momentum when you're performing the action, no matter how long you revved up beforehand. And then we have Charmy, the character who demolishes this game in every way. He can't spin dash or jump for that matter, but he has directional air dashing similar to Vector. Thing is, his air dash has no limit and can be spammed as many times as the player wants. Plus, that air dash also has an active hitbox, so you can just dash right into enemies and bosses alike. In fact, if you've been watching this footage while I was talking about how broken this character is, you can see that I was able to clear an entire stage in under a minute despite having no prior knowledge to its layout. Similar to another game I've talked about on this channel before, Charmy is a flying cheat code and should only be used if you want to ignore the game's mechanics entirely. When you select your character and right before you enter a stage, you'll be taken to this combi station where you must play a mini game and use this claw to sort of pick your partner. The claw is going to be in constant motion once you initiate the movement, and the characters are going to be swapped around at random, and in some way your partner will affect how your gameplay is going to turn out. But seeing as how everyone here minus Charmy is useful as a partner, I don't think it truly matters who your match wait a minute, I don't remember seeing either of you two in the character select screen. Okay, let me introduce you all to Bomb and Heavy. These two badniks escaped from Robotnik's forces so they could lend a hand to our heroes. However, it is heavily speculated that they're really here to slow the team down, which does add up considering the fact that these two are nothing but a hindrance if you get them as a partner. Heavy, as the name implies, will make your tethering mechanic very awkward to use. He slows you down, takes forever to come to a complete stop, and you can forget about doing any kind of precision rubber band mechanics as long as he's around. His only upside is that enemies are instantly destroyed when he runs into them, but that's all he has. However, I'd rather deal with Heavy than his partner any time of the day. Bomb is lightweight and won't slow you down in the slightest. However, if Bomb takes any damage whatsoever, he will go out of his way to give you a hug before blowing up and making you lose all your rings. Even if he has a shield, he will still try to blow you up regardless. Now that's just messed up. He takes my shield power up and still goes out of his way to put me in a body bag. Ain't no way the two of you are not double agents for Robotnik. Getting these two at all is like the equivalent of the Power Rangers recruiting Bulk and Skull to go fight Rita and her squad. If I were Knuckles, I'd knock them both into the next generation. Alright, that's my last pun. I promise I won't unleash anymore.
fire!
Anyway, once you have your partner, you then need to hit a mini roulette to see which of the 5 areas you're going to visit. Then you're finally off. Like I said earlier, you need to complete 5 acts in each area before that stage is finally said and done with, of course topping the 5th act with a boss fight at the end. If you've seen my previous videos covering the earlier Sonic games, you already know how I feel about having more than 2 acts per stage. Any more than that is rather excessive. Not the worst thing in the world, but it can enable certain areas to overstay their welcome. But Knuckles Chaotix adds a bit of a twist to this whole thing. You don't play through each act in one sitting like you would have done before. Instead, you'll be sent right back to the lobby where you can exit stage left and reselect your character, and also re-roll your partner if you ended up getting bomb and heavy. Then you'll be able to play the roulette again, where you'll possibly land in a different area this time, or jump right back into the next act depending on the RNG. On one end, this does alleviate the issue with having so many acts to clear before you can finally lay that area to rest, plus the randomness does ensure that you'll be faced with something fresh to a certain degree. But on the other hand, with only 5 different areas to work with, eventually that fresh experience will wear off and it can feel a bit more scatterbrained than anything else. This also means if there's a particular area you aren't very fond of, you constantly have the threat of that stage showing up in your next visit, which gets even worse if you screw up during your next run, meaning you're gonna have to deal with it later on. Furthermore, you have this day and night cycle that I mentioned earlier. Every time you clear 2 stages, the time will shift from morning to midday to evening, then nightfall. The clock in the lobby's background will reflect this along with the soundtrack in order to match the tone that it's going for, with the evening variant being my all-time favorite. That song is appropriately named Evening Star, by the way. I just love the chill 90s style R&B vibe it's giving off. It also just dawned on me that Evening Star is the same name the Mania team made for themselves when they formed their own studio. And considering how many elements they've taken from Knuckles Chaotix when developing Mania, I am 1000% sure that that studio name is a direct reference to this game. The day and night cycle isn't exclusive to the lobby either. Just like how it was showed to us in the opening stage, each area you visit will also be played in that current time zone, changing its visuals to match the setting. This also changes where the enemies and obstacles are placed, and certain hidden doors will become available depending on the day cycle. I thought this was a pretty cool idea and made the game feel more lifelike in a way, plus it ensures that each replay won't be the same. Because of how the tether system works and each character having their own means of stage traversal, you can expect a lot of verticality in these level designs. A lot of the time when you're attempting to get to the goal, you'll find yourself traveling upwards through different platforms or by the stage mechanics themselves. But it should also be noted that each area in some way feels like a labyrinth, as there's no real linear pathing that will take you straight to the end. On paper, this sounds like a solid idea. You're playing as a team of explorers, so you want to put them in an environment where you're more than encouraged to use a combination of their wall scaling abilities along with the rubber band shenanigans to get around. On the other hand, if you try to take on these stages like you would in any other classic Sonic game, you're going to have a very high chance of getting lost with no way to figure out which way is up. It's happened to me very often when I was playing, and it took me a while to realize that I needed to take a different approach. Each of these areas also has some kind of gimmick that is unique and sets them apart from each other. Marina Madness consists of ships that you can raise or lower in order to access different parts of the stage. Botanic Base has these hidden elevators that will only activate depending on the day cycle. Outside of that, it's probably the most vanilla out of every area you visit. Techno Tower has the most verticality out of every stage, since the name of this game is to reach the very top in each act. Speed Slider is an amusement park that has the most traditional stage design, and it will be the closest you'll get to playing these acts like previous Sonic games. The stages here are more horizontal and contains a great deal of ramps with the sole purpose to keep you on the move, truly living up to its name. Playing as Espio or Mighty is an absolute must. Finally, we have the amazing arena. This is the only area in the game where its stages requires more than one condition in order to complete them. You need to find a hidden switch in order to power up the factory you're currently in, and until you do that, you'll be running around in this gloomy setting while hearing a haunting yet strangely addicting tune in the background. Anyway, once you find the switch with the help of this ghost clock pointing you in the right direction, the stage will liven up and be filled with bright, vibrant colors, complete with a lively track that fits the atmosphere. However, you must be warned. While you can clear the stage without activating the switch at all, it won't count and you'll be sent right back to the lobby as if nothing happened. So whatever you do, make it your mission to find that switch before you even think about hitting the goal. The stages themselves, for what they are, do have some layer of enjoyment to them. The visuals are easy on the eyes, and I should point out that there isn't a single bad track in this game at all. Marina Madness and Botanic Base are my top favorites out of the 5, though in Botanic Base's case, its stage music sounds like something you'd hear straight out of the Weather Channel. In each of these stages, you'll find your usual power-ups like your ring boxes, speed shoes, invincibility, and shields, though be warned that any of the solo power-ups like shields can be taken by your partner and they will reap the benefits instead. There are also several other power-ups unique to Knuckles Chaotix that will make your character into a giant while increasing their jump height or shrink them down while hindering their mobility. You can also temporarily change your partner outright based on whose face is showing on the character box when it's smashed, and you can also temporarily swap the leader position with your partner, letting you control them instead. Finally, we have the combine ring that basically prevents all of your rings from scattering everywhere when hit. We'll see this lovely power-up make a return when Sonic Mania rolls around. Along with these power-ups, you can find these hidden rings that will take you to a special stage where you're constantly in free fall, and it's here you can collect other power-ups, score boxes, and more rings. But keep in mind that your ring count is your timer, and whatever ring is spent here, you won't get it back when you leave. So if you plan on meeting that 50 ring requirement to enter the Chaos Ring stages at the end of each act, I would avoid these like the plague. Since I brought that up, let's talk about these stages, cause man, this has gotta be one of the most disrespectful special stages I've ever experienced in a Sonic title. So here's the scoop. You're sent into an area where you're running on rails and you can only move left, right, and jump. You can also move to a point where you're able to run on the ceilings and all that. Your main goal here is to collect enough blue spheres before you reach the finish line, with the rings being your timer. If you played through Mania, this should all sound familiar because this is exactly where Team Evening Star gained a majority of its inspiration for its special stage design. But to say these special stages here are rough is an understatement. Right off the bat, the first issue I ran into was this terrible depth perception and somewhat dickish placement for the blue spheres. This isn't going to be too much of a problem in the first 2 stages, but once you hit stage 3, that is when these issues will hit you at full force. Harmful obstacles will start showing up out of nowhere. It's very easy to misjudge the timing of your jumps, and you really, I mean really have to go out of your way to collect the blue spheres, as just running ahead and grabbing what you initially see in front of you isn't enough. As I said earlier, the sphere placement is very dickish. There are moments where you're going to have to purposely run into these bumpers to get that moonwalk action and collect certain spheres before you're able to proceed. Other times you're going to need to stall your movement by purposely running into these walls and bumpers until you're able to collect every sphere in that area, then proceed with some awkward jumps right after that. And if you ever think it's a good idea to go off the beaten path instead of sticking to the main route, forget about it. You'll never have enough spheres if you do that. Believe me, I've done it like 3 times and still got blue sphered out of the Chaos Ring. If this is your first time playing this game, there is absolutely no way you can complete these stages on your first attempt. You need to do a lot of trial and error, memorizing the most optimal sphere placement and collecting them with almost no margin for error. And of course, if you fail, you need to complete the stage with 50 rings and hit that gold ring before it's too late. Better hope you aren't small when you're doing this, by the way. The only way it is even possible to collect all 6 of these useless donuts is to abuse use the power of save states. And yes, there is a very good reason why I call them useless. There ain't no way in hell I was gonna be able to sit down and do this the legit way. And I actually feel bad for anyone who suffered completing them in real time on actual hardware. As a wise man once said,
modern problems require modern solutions.
The last thing I need to bring up with these stages is two traditional elements are noticeably missing in this game. For one, this game has no checkpoints at all, and you also don't have any lives either. So what happens if you get hit without any rings? Well, your partner will temporarily get knocked out of the map and leave you to fend for yourself. If you take any damage while your partner is gone, you'll be kicked right back into the lobby again like nothing happened. This means if you, let's say, make it all the way to the boss fight at the end and bite the dust there, you need to play that entire act again right from the beginning, assuming you're able to get it during the roulette. Yeah, this is a design choice I kinda wasn't fond of. Speaking of these bosses, I say now is a good time to talk about them. Before you begin any of these fights, you're treated to this nice little cutscene in the beginning, and I actually kinda thought that that was a very nice touch. But aside from that, there isn't too much to say about these boss fights in this game, as most of them are relatively easy to take down. Even Metal Sonic Kai, who was supposed to be the very last boss you fight. The only boss fight where I actually struggled was during your first round with Metal Sonic, but that is because the real battle was against the RNG, because you need the roulette to land on the X in order to damage him, and depending on your luck, this fight could take a while. I was never a fan of RNG battles like these outside of RPGs where it would make more sense in that environment. All this fight did was give me flashbacks of dealing with Gates Foolery in Mega Man X6, another boss where the player has to rely on RNG. Thank goodness not too many games design their bosses around this type of playstyle. When you finally beat the game, you're greeted with two different endings based on whether or not you collected all 6 Chaos Rings. If you beat Metal without collecting them all, you'll get the bad ending where Metal Sonic proceeds to bring death and destruction everywhere he goes. And I have to say, this ending is a bit on the darker side considering what's happening here. So what happens when you get all of the Chaos Rings? A cool power-up? An extra boss fight in space? A nice cinematic for your efforts? Nope. We don't get none of that. No super forms, no extra fights, not even a feel-good cutscene. Hell, a stage select would have been plenty, but instead, we just get this Mario Sunshine treatment. Arguably, even worse than that, because at least the Mario Sunshine treatment gave you an illustration. See, this right here is why I said those donuts are useless, and going through all that effort to collect them is literally a waste of your time. With everything that I've laid out, it's not hard to see why this game had not made a comeback. In order to truly enjoy Knuckles Chaotix, you really need to throw away all of your knowledge on how to play these Sonic games and treat it like a completely different beast. And even then, you also need to have enough patience to get past how awkward this game is going to feel, and the time it will take to get over that hurdle is going to vary from person to person. Still, if you're a fan of the Sonic franchise as a whole and want to experience one of Sonic's most obscure titles, you should give this game a try and see for yourself. Knuckles Chaotix is easily one of those titles where you're either going to like it and find some level of charm in all its quirkiness, or throw it away because it will do too many things that will piss you off. As for me, I'm indifferent. While I won't go so far and say that this is the most frustrating game I've played, it's also not one of the greats either, and at best it's average. But I will give the game its props for trying something new and creating a fresh, unique approach to the series despite all the rough patches that need to be ironed out. Them special stages can kick rocks though. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate all of you for sticking around, and you all are magnificent gems in my book. And while I don't bring this up too often, this channel is getting closer to hitting 1,000 subs. I would love to see the elusive clan grow stronger and get to a point where I can definitely upload more frequently than I am now, as well as implement newer ideas that could get you all involved in the action. So if you want to see all that happen as much as I do, make sure you hit that siggity sub, like the video if you dig it, and make sure you share it around. You have no idea how much it would mean to me if we make this happen. In the meantime, I hope I get to see y'all in the next one. Later!